washed over Warner's cockpit, amplified by the intense temperatures outside. Gasping for breath inside his neural helmet, he watched the Zeus take the terrible energy of his hits. 2 of the beams struck it squarely in the chest, while the third slashed across the ground, turning a long stretch of sand into polished glass. Warner was proud of those hits. Targeting energy weapons through a sandstorm was no easy feat. He maneuvered his Awesome to the right, checking his secondary tactical monitor for how many enemy units he could see. Over a dozen mechs had already begun trading fire with his own emerging units. Path of Glory, page 45 by Randall N. Bills. It's frequently said that when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. In the age of the battle mech, the saying might need to be updated to read, when you're an Awesome, everything looks like scrap. The story of the Awesome, like so many other 3025 TRO classics, begins during the Star League. It was a time when every weapons manufacturer wanted to get in on the battle mech boom. More specifically, juicy Star League Defense Force contracts that led company CEOs to make cash register noises on their way to the executive washroom. At some point between planning on that next crucial super yacht purchase and making a fort out of currency, a design team was tasked with piecing together an actual product to meet contract specifications. Like with any well-completed homework assignment, that AWS 8Q Awesome specs were, inspired by another battle mech known as the Striker, which was another 80-ton mech, which had served the SLDF well since 2571. However, after close to a century of use, it was clear the design was showing its age. The engineers and designers at Technicron Manufacturing within the Free Worlds League sought to take what worked from that design and then push the opportunity cost curve toward more offensive weaponry and armor at the cost of speed. Constructed around their in-house Type G frame and a Pitman 240 Fusion engine, the Awesome's top speed was limited to just 54 kilometers per hour. But besides not going anywhere quickly, the mech wasn't intended to earn its name by arriving at the party first. It was meant to arrive on the scene and end that party quickly. Protected by 15 tons of Duralex heavy special plate armor, 240 points made the Awesome a tough nut to crack. It was made all the more challenging thanks to 3 Cruise particle projection cannons, which could be consistently fired thanks to the inclusion of 28 single heatsinks distributed across the mech. There was even enough mass left over for the inclusion of an emotional support diverse optics small laser in the mech's head critical location. Overall heat dissipation was stellar in comparison to many other heavy and assault mechs that became legendary during the Succession Wars. Firing all 3 PPCs while on the run, waddle, yielded only 4+ heat into the red, which was entirely doable. The first Awesomes to be distributed were snapped up by the regimental command lances and any mech warrior who had enough sway to lay claim on it within the SLDF. Only later, as more were produced, did assault lances start to feature this walking PPC delivery system. It quickly earned legions of fans, and reports suggest it struck fear in the hearts of all but the most foolhardy of mech warriors. Typically, the PPCs would be fired in a staggered pattern to both reduce heat buildup as well as create a 1-2-3 pattern of hits that could knock off a target's aim and batter the mech warrior in their cockpit, even if they survived the damage from the weapons. When working together with other assault and heavy mechs, the Awesome was seen as a nearly unassailable foe. Of course, opportunity cost spares no one, and the Awesome had to be deployed carefully due to the limitations of PPC technology at the time, which made point-blank shots perilous for the user. With only a small laser and unable to flee quickly from fights, the Awesome could be chased down by lighter mechs that knew how to take advantage of its weaknesses. Though the Awesome would end up used by each of the great houses during the Succession Wars, the largest number could be found among the forces of the Free Worlds League. This was due to the fact that the last functioning production line was located in the Savannah system, which was a long-time Free Worlds League holding. So while lances, including the Awesome, were more common among the Purple Birds, few militaries elsewhere could turn down the opportunity to field one. The passageway was 3 kilometers of cave-black vacuum, lit only by Alpha Lance's running lights. His Cyclops was the Mech Corps' heaviest assault mech. The other members of Alpha Lance drove 80-ton Awesomes, nearly perfect mechs for Tut Enakai's environment. Each was equipped with 3 PPCs, which used no ammunition, and the treacherous heat of firing them quickly dissipated in nighttime conditions. At 50 kph, they thundered down the dark tunnel. Daybreak on Shining Mountain, Shrapnel, Year 1, page 417, by Travis Heerman. In an assault on a mech repair yard and storehouse on Solaris in late 29-28, the 5th Brigade of the Fusiliers of Orient put 6 Awesomes to work clearing out the lighter defense forces. The vehicles and light mechs scattered and fled under the barrages of unyielding PVC fire. With the element of surprise and an overwhelming power advantage, this raid went down in the annals of Free Worlds League history as one of the most successful and profitable small-scale operations up to that point. Who could have imagined that sending 6 Awesomes to take a lightly held position could work out? Clearly it was an inspired plan by a savvy mind. Julius Caesar, take notes. In July of 3002, the Cretan 8th Sword of Light Regiment and 4th Proserpina Hussars were graced with the opportunity to defend themselves from assault lances consisting of Awesomes at the 3rd Battle of Harrow's Sun. Finding themselves unable to cut through the assault mech's armor plating as their positions were charged, the initial push by the Davions was more successful than anticipated. The Awesomes overran their support troops and ended up taking more concentrated fire as they pushed deeper through the front lines. After several Awesomes were brought down, the Davions were forced into a retreat. All was not lost though, as the Cretans decided to evacuate from Harrow's Sun just 2 weeks after the incident. Doc's massive Awesome raised its arm-mounted particle projection cannon to fire a crackling lightning blast at a jumping griffin. The forest green mech was hit dead in the torso, shedding armor and internal chunks in a blast of smoke and electricity. As the griffin touched down, the weight of the collapsing torso tore through its pelvis and it hit the ground in a roaring black cloud. Doc's Awesome and his command lance ran past the downed mech. Doc Ben's Shrapnel Year 1, page 752 through 753, by David Smith. One of the more famous Awesome mech warriors was Lieutenant Danielle Peterson, who was employed under contract with Chisholm's Raiders as of 3025. Known not only for her piloting skills and almost supernatural ability to move her Awesome named Pretty Baby in ways that seemed impossible, but also for her stature and beauty. Peterson's name and face was known across the inner sphere. Though she did frequently see offers from stables on Solaris to become a competitor and leverage her notoriety into fame and fortune, Lieutenant Peterson stayed loyal to House Davion and continued to fight for the Great House. Though her ultimate fate is unclear, it's quite possible she finished out her career and retired. While the lore doesn't suggest she ran anything but a stock Awesome 8Q, fans of Mechwarrior Online will be quick to point out that there was a Pretty Baby heroic mech released by PGI which sported an extra light fusion engine and a variety of other upgraded weapons. There, I mentioned it. Now you don't have to yell at me in the comments, right? Right? Deep in the developing battle, Zelensky's brick house-shaped Awesome staggered backward under the brunt of heavy fire. Deep gashes melted and blasted out of its armor. The 80-ton assault mech fired back, its triad of particle projection cannons bathing the scene in an actinic blue light. But a withering volley of return fire tore open Zelensky's torso. Black electrical fire smoke drifted out of the wound. Thorn 1, this is Rose 1, Zelensky coughed audibly over the channel. We can't hold it. Hunting Season, page 53-54, by Philip A. Lee. Variants of the Awesome. There aren't any. Thanks for coming by today for the video.
17.
Oh. Minifrog says there's upwards of 17 variants depending upon how you want to count them. There are more than a couple of custom variants run by specific mech warriors and one droned control version from a somewhat terrifying incident on the planet Necromo. To keep this video from being several hours long, I'm going to pick and choose the variants that I think are the most interesting or demonstrate some of the attempts to update the Awesome for later eras. Our first variant is the AWS-8R, and it was first spotted in 2683, just a short 18 years after the 8Q's debut. The lore suggests the removal of one or more of the PPCs was common in field refits, and the 8R reflects an extreme case where all 3 were removed in favor of a large laser in the right arm and 2 LRM-15s split between the side torsos. There was no structural changes to armor or engine, and even the 28 single heat sinks were not touched, which resulted in the 8R being wildly oversynced. An alpha strike including the head-mounted small laser while on the run generated just 21 heat, leaving 7 heat sinks without the opportunity to self-actualize as lava lamps. While obviously not min-maxed here, the Eadeh did provide the battlefield commander an 80-ton fire support mech, which was tough to take down. Unfortunately, as we dig deeper into the details, that plan starts to fall apart a bit. The 2 tons of ammunition for the LRM-15s provided each launcher just 8 shots apiece, and they were both stored in the center torso. This provided powerful motivation for the Awesome's Mechwarrior to expend that ammunition quickly in battle, lest the mech go Super Saiyan in all the wrong ways. In 2815, a more complete refit was carried out with the AWS-8T variant, which pulled 5 of the heatsinks in order to make room for a second large laser, which was badly needed for the mech. The LRM-15s from the previous variant were still there along with the small laser, but now the mech was no longer oversynced and the overall power of the mech was improved. Still, something feels off about an Awesome that doesn't carry at least 1 PPC. It's like having a fish without its bicycle. Leaping ahead to our Helm memory core upgrade, the AWS-9M Awesome received a significant overhaul thanks to Irian Battlemechs Unlimited and Technicron manufacturing. The most significant structural changes were the installation of an extra light 320 fusion engine, which pushed the mech's top speed to 65.6 km per hour, and the upgrade to 20 double heatsinks, which vastly improved the mech's cooling capabilities. Those heatsinks would be needed as there was hardly a PPC during the era which didn't see the upgrade to the ER variety. The Awesome 9M was given 3 of the very warm extended range PPCs, which improved the mech's range, eliminated the minimum range, but at the cost of 5 additional heat per shot. Backing up the big guns, it's clear the designers were seeking to reduce the threat of being chased down and isolated by lighter mechs with the installation of a medium pulse laser into the center torso. Upgrading the small laser in the head to pulse technology and even adding 2 streak SRM-2 launchers to the mech's center torso and left arm, fed by 1 ton of ammunition on the left leg, went a long way to making the mech dangerous in the short range. With only 4 critical locations left on the 9M, this Awesome was jam-packed with goodies. There was even 1 ton of mass left over, which was devoted to armor, boosting the total to 16 tons of standard plate. While some critics of the design will point to the XL engine as a negative for a normally very rugged and hard to take down battle mech, I would counter that with it being kind of a fair trade-off for pushing the movement profile up to 460 and making the mech viable in short-range brawling. In this case, the juice was worth the squeeze. Yeah, I suppose I'm a little disappointed they were this predictable, Toman said as his Awesome unleashed another barrage of PPC fire into the Mary and Thunderbolt. The enemy mech reeled from heavy particle impacts in its torso and left leg, and looked for a moment as if it might topple, but it recovered and unleashed a return barrage of laser fire. Toman's battlemech easily shrugged off the hits and took another step forward to punctuate that it was not backing down anytime soon. Drawing the Short Straw, Shrapnel number 13, page 91 and 92 by David G. Martin. In 3057, an interesting variant of the Awesome designated the 9Q showed up, and it's our first Operation Sneaky Sneak Awesome of the day. As humorous as it is to imagine an 80-ton Awesome going anywhere without being noticed, let's add a bunch of signal noise to the sensor network. That way you may be expecting a Raven, and instead you get a bunch of PPCs on a walking death machine. Speaking of, the 9Q carried not 3 but 4 standard particle projection cannons scattered across the arms and side torsos. This was made possible through the use of 19 double heatsinks instead of 28 singles. Additionally, a Guardian ECM was added to the center torso, and the standard small laser was retained in the head critical location. With 15.5 tons of standard plate armor, the 9Q was a tough nut to crack, and the 1 through 4 PPC shots could be devastating. It's rare to see the standard PPC used in variants for mechs after 3050, and the Awesome 9Q is a great implementation of this older technology. A Mechwarrior could fire all 4 PPCs while on the run and only end up at 4+ into the red. While not as speedy or fancy as the 9M, it is a good example of just how adding double heatsinks to an energy boat can have a big impact. If you haven't already given it a shot, I would recommend it. Leaping forward 11 years to 3068, the Awesome 10KM saw a significant structural change with the conversion of the mech's frame to endo steel. It received a compact gyro and a compact engine. If it's been a while since you've seen that, the center torso of the mech looks like this, with just 3 critical engine locations and 2 gyro locations. The cost of the compact construction was a 50% increase in the weight for both the engine and the gyro. The 10km was a project undertaken by a team consisting of designers from Alshane Weaponry and Irian Technologies. Their goal was to create a variant of the Awesome which could be very tough to bring down. Each side torso was equipped with a heavy PPC that could reach out to 18 hexes for 15 damage. They were joined by a snub-nosed PPC installed into the right arm which could add to the damage starting at 15 hexes and getting more powerful on the mech's march into short range. Finally, a Guardian ECM was added to the center torso to further improve the mech's longevity. With 18 double heat sinks, the 10km could fire both heavy PPCs while on the run without any heat buildup, but adding that snub-nosed PPC could make things pretty toasty. A full alpha strike while on the run net the mech 6+ into the red, which isn't great for a mech that is already starting at a 350 movement profile. Dropping that run speed to 4 could be a bit scary, but in the right moment, hitting a mech with 40 damage and 3 big chunks could be too good to pass up. Produced in limited runs for elite units within the Free Worlds League and the Draconis Combine, the Awesome 10km was a rare but quite notable sight on the battlefields of the late 3060s and early 3070s. If spotted elsewhere, it would have had to be salvaged, as both producers were restricted by contract from selling the mech elsewhere. The Awesome 10km is a good example of new technology taking what already worked with the battle mech and making it even better. While there are more efficient and powerful mechs out there in the 80-ton category, the 10km rates high on my very scientific and not at all arbitrary fun scale. Trip fired his PPCs again, wilting at the surge of heat that flooded his Awesome's cockpit. His damaged engine shielding was making it hotter than normal. It was becoming difficult to breathe, but he needed to pour it on to thin out the tanks swarming his thumpers, keeping them from relieving the Filtvelt militia. Blinking away sweat, he growled and sublimated his instinct to fire. Even so, the distance closed too slowly as the tanks herded his comrades away from the landing site. Another growl escaped his throat as Lieutenant Creek Johnson fell to a pirate demolisher. The tank's huge cannons amputated both legs from Johnson's battered Zeus. Pride in PPCs, Historical Turning Points Tortuga, page 1, by Geoff Doc Swift. Our next variant was the one-of build used by Buck Tripp, a major within the Thumpers, a mercenary company formed in 3023 and still in operation as of 3145. Born in 3036, Buck Tripp grew up within the Thumpers as his father was third in command in the organization. In 3076, Tripp had reached the rank of major, and when the Thumpers were hired by the Filtvelt Coalition to hunt down the source of recent pirate raids, he came up with a bold plan. Once Tortuga Prime was deemed the most likely source of the pirate attacks, Tripp decided a split drop could be useful in hitting a series of weapons production sites before the defending forces could properly mobilize. Unfortunately for the Thumpers, not even Tripp's upgraded Awesome could stem the tide of defending tanks which swarmed the invaders. When the pirates deployed chemical weapons against the infantry and tanks departing from the Thumper dropships, the whole operation was thrown into chaos. After taking devastating losses, the Thumpers were forced to retreat from Tortuga Prime. They were not the first to arrive on Tortuga expecting an easy victory and finding only defeat. They'll probably not be the last either. Tripp's Awesome was selectively upgraded to boost the mech's movement profile up to 580, which makes this our Roadrunner variant of the day. In order to make this happen, a 400 XL engine was installed along with an extra light gyro. The armor was swapped over to 13.5 tons of ferrofibrous plate. The only weaponry the mech carried was a trio of standard PPCs, split between the side torsos and the right arm. Cooled by 16 double heat sinks, it was possible for Buck Tripp to run his mech at top speed while firing all 3 PPCs without worrying about any compounding heat issues. It's an interesting build and still fun to see the standard PPC on mechs in the 3070s. It does a pretty good job of handling the old problem of the PPC minimum distance by making the mech run just a lot faster, so kudos to that. If you're looking for a fast Awesome, you may enjoy this one. In 3079, a research team for Technocron on Tonga Tapu announced that they had been working on updating the Awesome platform to incorporate both clan and emerging inner sphere technologies. By this point, a local company was producing their own clan spec double heat sinks, so the Awesome was a perfect choice to put them to work with a new variant. The original 240 Fusion engine was left alone, as well as the 15 tons of standard plate armor. The 20 double heat sinks provided substantial cooling for a bevy of energy weapons. A compact gyro was needed to cram everything into the mech's frame. The awesome 11M carried 8 light PPCs spread across the mech's frame and arms. 4 of them were supported by PPC capacitors, which boosted the mech's damage by 5 at the cost of 5 additional heat plus charging time. The idea was to create a consistent stream of PPC fire onto a target, overwhelming it with smaller hits rather than relying upon 3 or 4 big strikes. The capacitors allowed for some flexibility in the use of the 8 light PPCs, as the full alpha strike was unreasonable for all but the most extreme circumstances if those capacitors were used at the same time. Otherwise, the mech is nearly heat neutral, firing just the light PPCs on their own while on the run. Unfortunately, the bold plans for the 11M were stymied by lax standards in the delivering of clan spec double heatsinks. Though the prototype worked with those purchased from clan Diamond Shark merchants, it seemed that the inner sphere versions were flaky and prone to shattering when first stress tested. When Technocron was able to get a lance of the 11Ms into battle to record data, it was a disaster as the slow-moving Awesome was unable to keep up with the swift Blakist mechs it was facing. All 4 of the 11Ms were eventually disabled from coordinated Word of Blake fire. Technocron was only able to salvage 2.5 of the prototypes, and the unfortunate results from the real-world test made the team rethink the design entirely. Research and development continued, and in 3133, Technocron was ready to try again, this time with the support of the Republic of the Sphere. The 11R broke with the tradition of using at least one PPC due to the significant shortage of the item in Free Worlds League space at the time. Instead, this new Awesome was loaded up with pretty much one of everything. Yeah, you heard that right, everything. The 11R rocked a 240 XL engine, but the movement profile could be boosted to 360 thanks to a supercharger added to the left torso. It was protected by 13 tons of stealth armor and had just 10 double heatsinks. The last bit of structural nonsense was the use of a compact gyro to fit in all the equipment. Alright, brace yourselves. In the right arm, we've got a light Gauss rifle was added to offer somewhat underwhelming prospect of doing 8 damage out to 25 hexes. It was fed by 2 tons of ammunition split between the right arm and right torso. That right arm was protected by Case 2 just in case the rifle was critically hit. Backing it up at long range was both a standard LRM-15 in the left torso and an extended LRM-15 in the right torso. The standard LRM-15 was fed by 2 tons of ammunition in a Case 2 protected left torso, and the ELRM drew its reloads from 3 tons of Case 2 protected ammo in the center torso. At short range, an ER medium laser installed into the head critical location could add an additional 5 damage. And finally, a Guardian ECM and coolant pod were added to the left arm to help improve the mech's survivability. Overall, the Awesome 11R is a bit of a mess of single-type weapons that don't offer any significant punch. At best, it's an 80-ton fire support mech with 2 LRM-15 launchers. Even the extended range of the ELRM doesn't really offer enough to make this expensive mech worthwhile. Spending 3 tons of mass on Case 2 is just painful to see. The Merrick Stewart Commonwealth ended up purchasing some of these 11Rs, and reports show at least a couple were used in an ill-fated attempt to retake Stewart in 3134. Production of the 11R began to spread across the Free Worlds League units, including the Silverhawk Irregulars and Lester Cameron Jones's Hussars. Though it did receive some criticism similar to my notes on the lack of punch, it's reported that the mech was useful when put up against clan force, as the light Gauss rifle and the ELRM-15 could pepper targets from beyond the range of even their advanced weaponry. Still, the 11R had trouble shaking a reputation for poor performance, and it's only rarely seen outside of the Free Worlds League. While we didn't get an awesome 2C, which would have been, well, pretty awesome, we did get a clan refit of the noble 80-ton monster in 3143 thanks to the Scorpion Empire, and specifically a star colonel named Rudolf Schmidt. It's unclear if this is a production unit or a one-of-a-kind refit, but either way it should make quite a few people happy, so long as they're not on the receiving end of a bunch of ERPPC fire. The 15.5 tons of standard armor and the 350 movement speed isn't going to be anything new, but the endocomposite frame and the 27 clan double heatsinks allow for just enough room to pack 4 clan ERPPCs into the mech's arms and side torsos. This possible 60 damage in 15-point chunks begs for comparison to the Warhawk's primary configuration and its 4 ERPPC loadout. Though the Warhawk does have that 5-ton advantage and a larger engine, the targeting computer, and of course the Comic Relief LRM-10, its 20 double heatsinks make using all those weapons while on the run a toasty proposition. The Awesome C, on the other hand, can fire all 4 ERPPCs while on the run and only end up at 8+ heat into the red. It's bad, but not crazy bad. For those who want more consistent fire and aren't already concerned with moving around too much, the Awesome C is an attractive option. If they aren't already, the Scorpion Empire needs to get these into production and export them as soon as possible. The last official Awesome we're covering today is the AWS-11H, and it was the result of Technicron Manufacturing's latest attempt to update the platform. The dawn of the IlClan era has been rough for the company as the fabled Tongatapu production lines were gobbled up by Alaric's Wolf Empire. Thankfully, Technicron's Savannah facilities included an orbital production line which could produce clan-grade endosteel. This was useful in their 11H revamp as it bought 4 tons of mass for use elsewhere. The classic 350 movement profile was retained with the standard engine, and 15 tons of standard plate armor isn't going to shock anyone. What will leave an impact are 3 heavy PPCs added to the side torsos and right arm. Along with the crucial emotional support ER small laser, the 11H Awesome packed quite a punch. Normally, this is where I would add the caveat that the heat from those heavy PPCs limited their effectiveness, but in this case, the 23 clan-grade double heat sinks make them viable across multiple salvos without building significant heat. A near alpha strike excluding that ER small laser while on the run left the 11H at just 1+ into the red. As far as IlClan era refits go, that 11H is a solid pick. Now I'm champing at the bit here to share my totally non-canon and unofficial Awesome 11MF, so let's get to it. Starting with the 11H mixed tech frame, I yanked those heavy PPCs and ER small laser in favor of a slightly more mixed short-range brawling build. The primary weapons are 2 snub-nosed PPCs in the traditional side torso locations. As much fun as the escalating damage is for these weapons, I think my favorite aspect of them is the 9-hex short range, making them deceptively accurate in mid-range combat. In the right arm, a plasma rifle applies another 10 damage plus its heat effects on BattleTech targets. 2 tons of ammunition in the arm are plenty for most battles. Backing them up, starting at 12 hexes, are 2 clan medium pulse lasers, both placed into the left arm. Starting at 9 hexes, an Inner Sphere Tech Streak SRM-6 on the left arm can be devastating to targets, softened up by the other weapons. 1 ton of Case 2 protected ammunition is stored in the left torso. Getting to that 9 hex distance is the goal for the Awesome, and to facilitate that I included an Inner Sphere anti-missile system in the left torso, fed by 1 ton of Case 2 protected ammunition in the torso. It's just enough to keep those LRMs and ATMs from chipping too much away on the way in. The 21 clan double heatsinks will do a great job of keeping the mech running cool. A full alpha strike including the SRMs and the anti-missile system triggering yields just 3+ into the red. That's not too shabby. In an ideal shot with all of the weapons impacting, that alpha strike would cause 56 damage plus 1d6 heat on the target. Not too shabby at all. If you'd like to see the record sheet or try it out on the tabletop, I've included the record sheet for it in PDF form in the video notes below. Let me know how it performs. So why do we love the Awesome? Besides the apt choice in name, it's just one of those 3025 TRO battle mechs which best demonstrates the incredible power of these massive walking instruments of death and destruction. The fact that the 8Q could consistently fire those 3 PPCs in a world of single heatsinks automatically made it an attractive choice. While it isn't as frequently seen in the novels as I would have imagined, it's always treated with respect by the authors. The Awesome is 80 tons of spit, vinegar, and glowing blue beams of man-made lightning, and that's just how we like it. If it was good enough for the Founding Fathers, it's good enough for us. Do you have an awesome story of glory and victory? Is there a variant that you think outshines the others? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep that discussion going. Thank you as always for coming by as we talked BattleTech, and thank you to Mini Frog for helping out with the audio as well. Also, thank you to those from the Mech Frog Discord who shared their painted mech minis. If you want to join us, I've included a link to the Discord server in the video notes below. If you enjoyed this video and felt it was worthy, don't forget the thumbs up button, and even hitting subscribe will make it much more likely you'll see my nonsense in the future. For those of you who have taken that extra step of becoming channel members and supported on Ko-fi, thank you. Without you, none of this would be possible. Until we meet again, please take care of yourself and your loved ones and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.